Today on CityCast Madison. Water, water everywhere, but what about the Badger Mill Creek? The Madison Sewerage District has a decision to make about how to deal with harmful phosphorus pollution. It wants to stop the flow of treated water into the Badger Mill Creek in Verona, which residents believe will put this treasured trout stream at risk. Verona Mayor Luke Diaz says he has a better solution. Clean up the phosphorus and keep the water flowing. It's Monday, May 1st. I'm Dylan Brogan, and here's what Madison's talking about. Mayor Diaz, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
So first off, can you please tell us what's special about Badger Mill Creek?
I think there's, two things I would focus on. One, it's a great kind of natural resource for wildlife. It's a viable trout stream, which is, it's kind of rare in a rapidly urbanizing area. And then I guess my second thing would be it's something I think a lot of people in the community like. People, frequently walk on the paths. You can see people fishing. You can see people looking for birds. Even seen a few people swim, although it's the muck level in the creek is high, so I think they're a bit braver than me. But it's basically a valuable community resource. And I think, as the area grows, not just Verona, but all of Dane County, I think it's important to preserve these things, both, for current generations, future generations, and for humans, plants, and animals.
So the controversy here is the Madison Sewer District. It's taken water out of the watershed, right? And people use it for whatever we use water for. And then for the last 20 years or so, it has been returning it to the Badger Mill Creek. And now, because of new state regulations having to do with phosphorus, they want to stop returning all that water to the Badger Mill Creek. So what do you believe will happen if that goes forward?
There's a risk that it could basically make the stream not viable for trout anymore. And if trout go away, like a lot of other stuff is going to go away as well. Not to mention, it's just, from an aesthetic perspective, it's not as interesting or not as valuable as a natural resource if it's, a much smaller and diminished creek. And I would also point out, climate change is real, and we're going to have a lot of ups and downs as far as, precipitation goes throughout the years. So it's entirely possible we're talking like a potential long-term drought. And instead of being sort of like a lifeline that could preserve the creek, them taking that away means it's got much less resilience, and we could, see it greatly diminish. And I think that's unfortunate.
And where exactly does Badger Mill Creek flow? Is it right through the center of Verona, or it's a lot of communities enjoy this creek?
Yeah, it does. It goes right behind City Hall, and even right behind my house, and then kind of eventually flows into the general Sugar Creek watershed, but eventually onto the Mississippi and down to the Gulf.
Okay, and interesting about the situation is that, the state is saying, hey, there's too much phosphorus in this water. But the city of Verona, your city, they want that water. I mean, it's treated water, but there's too much phosphorus in it. Aren't you concerned about that?
I mean, I feel like it's been that way for a long time, and it works. And so there's a general kind of concern that if you upset the balance of something that works, you're going to wreck it. But I mean, I would point out that if they turn the effluent off, they're just going to take that, phosphorus-laden water and put it into Badfish Creek. So the plan to reduce the effluent isn't like a real plan to address the phosphorus issue. Because I get MMSD's perspective, and the phosphorus levels are high. But taking it from one creek to another one and kind of flipping it between permits and variances and all the other stuff, technically, yes, that's meeting the letter of the law. However, it's not actually directly addressing the issue, and you still have the problem of phosphorus in the watershed. So, I mean, I would like it if they would try to come up with actual solution to the phosphorus and not just moving it around so they can keep their permits.
Yeah, interesting how that all works. How moving it from one watershed to another seems to make the big difference here. And when you say effluent, that we're talking about treated water that is returned to the Badger Mill Creek, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, if it was up to you, would you keep on doing what they've been doing for 20 years and pouring millions of gallons into this creek every year?
I mean, yeah, with, of course, the understanding is that they do have to address the phosphorus levels, and they obviously want to keep their permit. So they do need to do something about it. I mean, if it was up to me, I would say something like adaptive management, because, well, one, I think we should be planting more native prairies anyway. It's good and kind of building out natural parks. I think it's good for people. They want to go for a walk their dogs, enjoy nature. And then I also think it's good for wildlife. So that's something I would want to see happen anyway, and even independent of this.
Yeah, what does that mean, adaptive management?
Yeah, so if you have like, say, the classic examples, you got a farm, right? And so the farm's next to some water, a canal, creek, whatever, it drains into the general watershed. So the farmer would put up a buffer of like native prairie that prevents the runoffs from the fields from going directly in to the creek, and it gives a chance for those plants to kind of grow up there.
Okay, so efforts to mitigate the phosphorus, essentially.
Right. Or potentially
Okay.
a treatment plant would be my like secondary option. Like I said, I think that's the only real way, either adaptive management or a treatment plant are the only ways to actually address the phosphorus levels in the water.
Yeah, so what does that look like? So you have this water and you want it to keep flowing into the creek. So it needs to be cleaned up somehow. So what would you like the sewer district to do?
Yeah, I guess either adaptive management or a treatment plant, because that one will keep the water
Okay.
being returned to the watershed, but also it'll actually address the root cause of the issue and not just sort of move it around, but address it in a real and meaningful way.
I hear treatment plant. That sounds expensive. Whose responsibility is it?
That would be MMSD's responsibility.
And you don't mean the school district. You mean the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. Let's call it.
So yeah, there's too many MMSDs, and I think it's like the Milwaukee has one too. So, but yeah, no, I had a conversation with my wife, and she's like, "Why is the school district involved in this?" I'm like, "No, different MMSD." But yeah, I should just say the Madison Sewer District. But yeah, ultimately that would be on them to build a treatment plant, and I completely understand that it's expensive. Nobody likes to see fees raised or anything like that. However, like I said, it's the only way to actually address the phosphorus issue.
Okay, and have you heard? I think the latest estimates are it's about 24 million, right?
Oh, that was higher than I had heard. I had heard something like 7 million.
Well, I think they keep shifting as we move along this debate. Okay, but Verona will be paying for a treatment plant if that's the option that moves forward, regardless. You're saying it just shouldn't all be on Verona residents?
That's my understanding. So like, if the sewer district does stuff in Yahara or somewhere else, I think that's good because ultimately it flows all the way through the watershed. And I would never like to see, different communities like played off against each other. But I guess what we're asking for is the same sort of investment and courtesy that Yahara watershed got in, the Upper Sugar River watershed, which is where the Badger Mill Creek is. So we're kind of just asking for the same thing because I think it's good by the Yahara, and I think it would be good in Verona.
Well, in municipalities being in this sewer district, so you're saying people in Verona are paying for what they're doing at the Yahara watershed, and people in Madison should pay for what's best for Verona in this instance.
You have to look at the district as like a holistic thing. So like if everyone's paying in to the district, then we all benefit from any kind of treatment or environmental things they do. So if they did adaptive management in Yahara Bay, I feel like we benefit from that in Verona. And if they do, adaptive management in Verona, I feel like people in Madison would benefit from that as well.
There are environmentalists who don't like this plan to stop adding water to the Badger Mill Creek. The city of Verona, other municipalities have some concerns. So what's the fear? What's the fear of what could happen if they stop returning water to the Badger Mill Creek?
Think about like the way the sewer district operates. A lot of their stuff doesn't get media attention, and because most of the time it is fine. They do a good job in a lot of ways. However, I do think that this issue has really struck a chord. And I think it's something that, a lot of people are concerned about. There's been municipalities that have passed resolutions against this. By my count, it's, City of Verona, Town of Montrose, Village of Belleville. I know the county's going to be talking about it May 4th. And that's
Yep.
very unusual because I think most of the time people are like, hey, like things are working fine. We can let the sewer district kind of do their thing. But I think this one, the decision it seems like they're pushing on towards, I think is a mistake. And I think a lot of people realize that.
The county board will be considering a resolution similar to what Verona passed, where they're basically asking the sewerage district not to do this and to come up with a new plan. But the sewer district does say the concerns about what would happen to the Badger Mill Creek are overblown, and that they've done some testing, and they said that the water levels will only drop a couple inches. So are you making too much out of this about the fears of what could happen?
I think that's a really fair question, but I guess I would turn it back around and say they didn't do a real study. The study that they did in February was limited. To get a true test of it, you'd want to do something throughout the year and capture all the different highs and lows. The study they did is the kind of study you do because you have to check like a box on a checklist. Like they have to do a study, but I don't think that the study has given them a full, complete picture. It's been pretty clear that staff has been pushing for the turning off the effluent. And I get it to a point because it's the simplest solution. You basically flip a switch. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but you basically flip a switch and you're done. Anything else like adaptive management, a treatment plant, that requires a lot more work. But again, like flipping the switch doesn't address the root cause.
The sewerage district, do you think there is a reluctance to clean up the phosphorus?
I don't necessarily think it's like a bad faith reluctance to clean up the phosphorus. I just think it's really difficult to do. And if you give most people a choice between you can do the easy thing or you can do something difficult, most people are going to default towards the easy choice, even if it's not really the correct one.
Okay. And so that's what this fight is over, that City of Verona and others, they want the sewerage district to do maybe the harder thing, which is to actually solve the root problem instead of just figuring out the easiest way to comply with state law.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my impression. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay.
I don't think I'm wrong, though. We'll see.
All right. Well, the City of Verona once operated its own wastewater treatment plant. I mean, is that an option? Can you guys how does that work? I mean, you join the sewerage district. Can you pull out? it's almost like a Verona Brexit from the sewerage district.
That would be a massive step and a massive undertaking. And I just, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think that would happen. I don't think it would. Like, Verona's a growing community. We're getting bigger, but there are advantages to being part of a district. You get to spread costs out more. You get economies of scale, things like that. And it's one of those things. It's like, I don't necessarily think it's good for the city of Verona to get like territorial and say, oh, we need to have our own, treatment plant just to sort of like teach the Madison sewer district a lesson. I don't think that's necessarily good for Verona. I don't think it's good for the sort of broader Dane County. But I mean, it's an option. I think it's an extremely unlikely one, though.
All these things are connected, right? And the water that we're using in Madison is also used by Verona, and it all flows to the same place ultimately. So I'm sure when you were elected mayor, did you think this would be a pressing issue?
I did not, but I will say it's, I sometimes joke with staff when it's too quiet. I'm like, oh, we're due for the next controversy or crisis. So, it's just one of those things of I think being in city government, stuff just comes up, and sometimes you see it coming, but a lot of times you don't, because ultimately, like, if you could see it coming, like, why didn't you do something about it before it became a controversy?
So has Verona invested in making the Badger Creek Mill a resource that people can use for trout fishing and other recreation? Is there any investment that has gone on in the last 20 years or so?
Yeah, absolutely. The city invested after the East Side Interceptor project was, redone. We invested in like tree replanting. We invested in stream bank restoration. The county invested, I think, more than we did. There was significant investment that came in, to kind of help the creek along. And the city has put up the Lincoln Street stormwater pond. It's right behind City Hall, and that's going to help with water quality as well. So yeah, the city's absolutely invested in it. We definitely put our money where our mouth is, and I guess we're just asking that the sewer district kind of meet us partway and help us out on this. And I would like to emphasize, like, we're absolutely, committed to helping them. If the sewer district went for, adaptive management, we would absolutely help. Because, like, I've been in a position as mayor where people are like, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And then you sort of take like the first tentative steps, like, oh, maybe we should. And that person just like disappears and you like never hear from them again. And it's like, well, okay, like, I'm willing to meet you halfway, but you gotta help me convince the city council members that this is a good idea. And so, like, I get maybe that they're worried that like all this pressure, that if they try to take, bold action on it, that all these people are like, oh, you should do this, they're going to disappear. But I don't think that's true. So like, if they took, steps for adaptive management, the city of Verona, all the environmentalists and all the other people who are concerned, I believe would absolutely step up and help them achieve their goals. I think there's a lot of people who believe in the creek.
So the sewerage district, even if they turn off the flow, it seems like they would help out with other improvements to help keep Badger Mill Creek the way it is. Things like habitat improvements and sediment removal. Are those viable options in your mind for addressing this issue?
I don't. I think they would be I guess, an okay consolation prize. I don't think it would be a good. It's definitely like a fallback position, or mitigating harm. So I don't think they would be good, compared to like just keeping the effluent, keeping the creek how it is. However, I do appreciate their kind of offer that if they harm the creek, they'll try to, I don't know, make it not quite as bad. I mean, like, I do appreciate that, but it's like,
so okay, I hear what you say.
well, because like if they ultimately decide to do it, yes, I absolutely want them to help with the creek, to kind of mitigate some of the damage they've done. However, it doesn't kind of address the root issue.
And yeah, who should ultimately pay for the phosphorus cleanup that the state and the federal government say are necessary?
It would be real nice to get help from the state or the feds, because ultimately, and like I said, I understand their position that they have to meet these phosphorus requirements from the DNR, but it would be nice to get some money from like a bigger pot. And because ultimately all the water stuff is connected, this eventually ends up in the Mississippi and in the Gulf. So I think you could easily argue there's a state national interest into, not having the dead zone expand out in the Gulf.
Okay. So what happens if the sewer district moves ahead with their plan to divert this water?
I will have to cross that bridge. Once the decision's been made, it's kind of permanent. It's not like if in a year there's a drought and parts of the creek dry up and all the fish die, it would be pretty hard for MMSD to undo that.
Well,
so
we're kind of at that point, aren't we, Mayor? Like where they're going to make a decision, and I mean, you don't want to be the mayor of I Told You Town when the Badger Mill Creek is all.
I will say, yes,
ruined.
vindication counts for very little.
Okay.
It's like, well, so like right now we're trying to put our effort into, making people aware, reaching out to commissioners, and making sure that everyone's aware of the long-term consequences of this decision, and just make sure it's all out there, and hopefully the commissioners will make the right decision.
Okay, so what do you think is missing in the staff recommendation?
Like I said, I think a longer term study is one of the key things that is missing. I think they should have perhaps brought the DNR in. It's not what it's what you can prove. But like from some of the environmental scientists, experts, and biologists that I've talked to, they don't think what MMSD is doing is adequate. Problem is they won't go on record and say that because of they work for the DNR. So it's kind of frustrating. But like, I do feel like if the sewer district had brought in more people from the DNR and let them speak directly to the public, if you've got a water quality biologist or someone who's an expert on trout or other wildlife, why not bring them in and let them write a report and then just put that directly on the sewer district website instead of filtering it through staff, or, doing it where you have like a public relations firm, which the sewer district did hire, and having them handle communications. I'd rather see the public and the commissioners directly interact with scientists who know a lot more and a lot better than I do about the potential risks.
I mean, has this become a political rather than environmental issue?
Politics is everything, so like, if it doesn't matter what you're talking about. It could be environment, housing, jobs, education. It's all political, because it's like, what are you trying to do? And it's like, how much do you care about the Badger Mill Creek as a trout stream or a valuable natural resource? That's a political question. But I think that, if you go to the science part of it, like, the risks are real and the harm is real. And I feel like the sewer district staff is downplaying that to a point, because I believe they've already have a preferred option.
Luke Diaz, the mayor of Verona, thank you so much for explaining what is going on with this environmental issue.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
That was Luke Diaz, the mayor of Verona. We reached out to the Madison Sewerage District for an interview. We'll keep you posted. The public hearing is May 11th, and the Madison Sewerage District expects to make a decision by the end of the month. We'll put a link in our show notes. And here's what else Madison's talking about. While we're on the subject of creeks, why not help clean one up? On Saturday morning, May 6th, volunteers are meeting at the Catholic Multicultural Center to pick up trash along Wingra Creek. Afterwards, the center is providing snacks and ice cream. See our show notes if you want to lend a hand. In other news, an update on a county job controversy. Dane County Executive Joe Parisi's pick for Director of Human Services, Representative Sheila Stubbs, is receiving some pushback. After a 5-hour hearing on the matter, the Health and Human Needs Committee voted to recommend rejecting her for this important county position. Supervisors raised concerns about, quote, misinformation being spread by Stubbs and her supporters that has led to threats and name-calling. Stubbs' mother called board chair Patrick Miles a racist, rat, and weasel. But the confirmation process isn't over yet. The full county board will weigh in the coming weeks. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Dylan Brogan, filling in for Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell someone in fair Verona about us? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Until then. The Health and Human Needs Committee voted unanimously. The Health and Human Needs Committee voted unanimously to recommend. Maybe we just get rid of that word.